We really did not engage in any violence whatsoever. The problem is that these far-left militias, you have to understand, are there solely for the purpose of committing acts of violence, and when they have the chance, they take it.
Once again, the far left has struck, this time in Lyon, France. On Thursday night, February 12th, the Nemesis Collective, a feminist group defending women's rights against threats from mass immigration and radical Islam, protested outside Sciences Po Lyon during a talk by anti-Israel activist and La France Insoumise MEP Rima Hassan. The demonstration turned deadly when Antifa militants attacked them violently. Quentin, a 23-year-old man allegedly providing security for the female activist, was brutally attacked, knocked down, his head striking the pavement, then repeatedly kicked. He suffered a severe brain hemorrhage, was placed in an induced coma, and tragically succumbed to his injuries. Another life lost for simply expressing opinions, just like the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk and the near-fatal attacks on journalists in the know by Antifa and the rising threats we face at Ribbon News simply for reporting the truth. Antifa are violent thugs, ready to kill for their political ideology. This is why Donald Trump lists Antifa as a terrorist organization, and in Canada, we should follow by labeling them as such. Sign our petition now at stopantifa.com, and today I'm joined by Matilda, spokesperson for Nemesis, who spoke with the collective in Lyon about the details of the attack.
My name is Matilda. I have been part of the Nemesis Collective for 6 years now, since its creation. I am one of the co-founders, along with Alice Cordier, who is our president. The Nemesis Collective was created in 2019 because something was missing from contemporary feminism, or at least from the feminism that existed in France at the time. Certain issues were not being addressed, particularly street harassment and the impact of immigration on women's safety. So we were created in response to what we saw as an incomplete feminism. We draw the connection between immigration and insecurity, and we denounce all profiles of aggressors. We are a feminism that could be described as right-wing, but above all, we see ourselves as a common-sense feminism.
Last night, you had a demonstration that got out of hand. You experienced an attack carried out by Antifa. Can you tell us about it?
Last night, some of our Lyon activists, there were 7 of them, went to a meeting at the Institute of Political Science in the city of Lyon, a meeting where Rima Hassan was speaking. Rima Hassan is a French member of the European Parliament from a party called La France Insoumise, which is a far-left party in Parliament. She was holding a meeting at that school, and our activists went there with a banner to denounce the far left. A group of Antifa members first attacked our activists. One of them was violently thrown to the ground and strangled. She ended up in the hospital. Alongside this, there were about 15 young men, nationalist activists, who were accompanying our female activists to ensure their safety and protect them from attacks. But unfortunately, what happened was that at the same time as our female activist was being assaulted, these activists were also attacked by Antifa members. They were chased, and 2 of them were caught. One was beaten quite violently, but remained conscious. The other was knocked to the ground, and his head struck the sidewalk very violently. He was then kicked in the head and body. He managed to get back up and walk a few meters before collapsing unconscious. Emergency services arrived to pick him up around 7:30 to 8 p.m. He was taken to the hospital, and there it was discovered that the brain injuries were extremely severe. He was placed in an induced coma. He is currently in a state of brain death at the hospital. A priest has since come to administer last rites, the final sacraments. It should be noted that he is a young man of only 23 years old, so he is extremely young, obviously, which makes this particularly tragic. That is what happened regarding the events.
How are the others who were with the young man doing?
Most of them managed to leave, and the second young man who was also assaulted was the one who called for emergency services. I have to admit that I believe his injuries are fairly superficial. He was not hospitalized, so as far as I know, he is doing relatively well, aside from the shock, of course. Our activists are also completely traumatized by this extreme violence and by what was, unfortunately, an attempted homicide, which may soon have to be described as homicide, since there is very little chance that the young man will survive.
Do we have any information about the assailant of the young man?
So we don't know exactly who the main attacker is. There is an investigation that will determine that. What I can tell you is that our activists recognized a man who was among the group of Antifa members who carried out the assault, since several of them were attacking this activist. Among them, our activists identified a man named Jacques-Henri Favreau, who is the parliamentary assistant of Raphaël Arnault, himself a member of parliament for La France Insoumise and the leader of a far-left group called La Jeune Garde, which was dissolved by the Council of Ministers not long ago. They have since filed an appeal before the Conseil d'État. They were actually supposed to have a hearing earlier this week to determine whether the dissolution would stand. It is a group that is extremely violent and frequently involved in acts of violence. Raphaël Arnault, their leader, and the employer of this young parliamentary assistant who was seen during the violence, is himself listed 3 times as an S-file by the French government. An S-file designation means that someone is considered a threat to state security. He has 3 such listings to his name and has been found guilty of assault committed in a group. He was sentenced to a suspended prison term for that offense.
Why does France have so many people who adhere to the Antifa movement? It shocked me when I went to France and saw so many people present who identified as Antifa, and several of them destroyed and vandalized public property.
I simply believe that there is extreme impunity on the part of the French government, which allows them to act, even though, as I said, they are repeatedly involved in acts of violence. In fact, these people are never held accountable. When we see that one of the leaders of these movements sits in Parliament, sits in our National Assembly, and votes on laws for the French people while being paid with public funds, we realize the absurdity and the level of impunity these groups enjoy. So I truly believe they are being allowed to act, and that is why they are multiplying.
Why in France do your media seems to focus on the far right while the violence mostly comes from the left?
That's a very good question. First of all, French public service media are very left-leaning, and they mainly relay information that suits them and aligns with narratives about far-right violence, while they very rarely denounce violence coming from the far left, so that is a problem. Fortunately, we now have alternative media. The leading news channel in France is CNews, and they dare to denounce these issues and the violence. They frequently invite us on, which is an opportunity. We do have some alternative media outlets. But overall, public service media are openly left-wing and do not denounce this. Today, the only real tool we have is social media. And that is very powerful for us because we can help shift public opinion and inform people about these issues. That is precisely what we do. Within the Némésis collective, we see ourselves as whistleblowers. That is truly our goal and our role.
So far, very few people have spoken on the subject. I saw Éric Zemmour. Does that surprise you?
Yes, it surprises me coming from some people. So we'll see how things unfold. But for now, Éric Zemmour, Sarah Nafo, Marion Maréchal, Nicolas Dupont-Aignan, there are at least a few personalities who have spoken out on this. But indeed, these are figures generally considered right-wing. The government has not reacted. Emmanuel Macron, our President of the Republic, has not reacted. Some deputies from Marine Le Pen's party have responded. Julianne O'Dole, for example, spoke about it earlier. Marine Le Pen hasn't responded yet. I think she will eventually, but yes, it's taking a bit of time. And on the left, there has been no reaction at all. Mélenchon indeed has not reacted, and Rima Hassan, the one who was holding the meeting when this attempted homicide occurred, has not reacted either, even though it happened behind the doors of her meeting.
How come the far left have called to counter-protest you if you were only just there peacefully?
Because the far left cannot tolerate freedom of expression when it doesn't go their way. We arrived with a banner and a few peaceful activists. We really did not engage in any violence whatsoever. The problem is that these far-left militias, you have to understand, are there solely for the purpose of committing acts of violence. And when they have the chance, they take it. And that's unfortunately how they made themselves known. But simply put, they are people who come to hit.
It's not the first time you have faced Antifa before.
We face this frequently. They commit acts of violence against us every time we hold a demonstration, every time we are present in the streets at a meeting, whenever we take action, no matter the topic. They try to hit us, to commit acts of violence. Now, we are fortunate in our demonstrations to have police protection. But the truth is, without this police protection, you should know that almost systematically, they would beat us, even though we are women.
I saw that there is a gathering planned in Paris on Sunday. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, for now, there is a lot of information, a lot of gatherings that apparently are planned all over France. I saw that the Cocard Étudiante, which is a right-wing university union, is organizing a gathering this Sunday. I think we will be present there. For now, we haven't communicated about it. I must admit our heads are kind of all over the place, because since this morning we've been very, very solicited by the media, etc. And of course, there is also the tragic and sad side regarding Quentin's condition, which worries us a lot. So for now, we haven't taken a stance on it, but indeed, I invite everyone who will be in Paris to go. It is very important to gather and make our voices heard regarding this tragic event.
The United States has labeled Antifa as terrorist organization, and we should do the same here in Canada. If you agree, go and sign our petition at stopantifa.com right now. Share the petition. Make sure that in Canada, we need to stop those terrorists who are terrorizing the population.